Good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. There were some fantastic speakers yesterday, and hopefully I can piggyback off that and really just give you an overview of, so what we do at UMSA every year, we develop a risk report that's really to serve for our members and various other organizations with information about South Africa, Southern Africa. This year we're giving more of a global perspective as well, and to really give you that contextual information that will help you to understand the risk environment we face as South Africans, as Southern Africans, as individuals even, and that we can then use that in our own organizations as an understanding to further identify and manage our risks. So I'm going to set the scene just by a couple of the results from the previous year, 2023. So the report is released every year in July. The aim with that is that it then gives you a couple of months to digest it, to use it, to then be ready for the start of your own financial years early in the following year. There's then also, which I'll touch on later, is the World Economic Forum report that comes out in the January or February of each year as well. And all of these reports help to give you that additional information of what's out there that can have an impact on us. So some of the 2023 results that we had, and a lot of them are still relevant, we had the failed state or polycrisis that the term was coined. Systemic failure of public infrastructure, we're still seeing that as quite a significant issue. National grid failure, thank goodness we've relaxed a little bit on that one, but as people say, when we're not in load shedding is potentially when the grid could fail because we're not actually curbing supply. Illicit economic activity, we're still seeing that as a significant issue in the mining and the construction industries in particular. Economic collapse, we're always on the brink of that, and we were chatting this morning about all this, what's happening in the US and how it can affect us economically as well. Disruption of digitally enabled services. We had a lot of speakers yesterday talking about cyber risk and cyber security and the issues that we face there. And one of the speakers actually mentioned even down onto a personal level on our mobile phones if we are disrupted. Climate change. Some might say it's too far in the future to worry about now, but we're starting to see significant impacts there as well. Collapse of social security systems, again, a particular one in our country. Unemployment and the cost of living and our livelihood sort of crisis, and then political instability. So you'll see a couple of similarities, and each year UMSA do a lot of research. We do various scenario planning, thinking about different scenarios and where South Africa is, where we're headed, and that sort of helps us to actually package the risk information. We then look at different contexts, identify the specific risks, and that's what we're actually busy with at the moment ahead of our launch in July. We've sent out a survey. A lot of you are UMSA members as well as SIGFARO. So some of you might have even actually responded to the UMSA risk survey. So it would be interesting to hear if any of you had. And from the survey results, we then have targeted interviews with specific industry members. And we were chatting to your CE this morning to get a SIGFARO perspective on the risk report as well. So different sector analysis from private, public, and we've also got some global perspectives this year as well. And then the report also has a call to action. So what do we need to do now? We've got all of this information. How do we actually take it forward and really make an impact in our industries and as South Africans as well? And we really want to have this collaboration with industries. Us as UMSA we're an institute to serve. We want to help you with your risk management. We want to provide this thought leadership, and being able to collaborate with different experts is really how we can take risk management forward and really, really add value, with the end goal being more resilient organizations and more resilient South Africans as well. So, yeah, just a couple of the other where we obtain the information, and as I said, some of you might have been involved in the survey. So we have different benchmarks and scans, we have our survey. We also speak to tertiary institutions and actually chat to academics, chat to students. has got a whole youth desk that is starting to gain a lot of traction as well. So chatting to the youngsters to see their perspectives as well. Different interviews, different contributions. So a lot of that you'll see when our risk report is published in July. There's a lot of faces. There's a lot of people that have contributed to the report, and it wouldn't be as rich in information as it was if it wasn't for all of those contributions. We're really just facilitating that gathering of information. And as I said, the youth focus, and we are trying to have a significant Africa focus this year as well, reaching as far up as Nigeria, where we've been working quite closely with their equivalent of as well. And then throughout the analysis of the results, so we've already got the survey results that we're busy processing, but then starting to analyze those and really getting the thought leadership through all of that collaboration. And it's a long process, but it's there to help you to understand the risk environment that we might be facing. Some of the scenarios that we looked at last year of the sort of resilience, and the quadrant just shows you different perspectives. So at the bottom, in the red, everyone in it for themselves, where South Africa is vulnerable, the world is vulnerable. We really don't want to be playing in this space. It's significant failures, fairly dysfunctional, where we've then got the dark blue, where the perfect scenario, where we are resilient as a country, we're resilient as the world, and people are leading from where they stand. We've got dynamic leadership, we've got collective leadership, we've got shared goals, we're constructive, we're all working towards a common goal. We're obviously seeing a lot of political instability at the moment on a global stage, and that obviously will have a significant impact on this particular quadrant. Then in the yellow, what we call, will the real leaders please stand up? Where we've just got these lingering, continuous issues within South Africa, whereas the world might be performing quite well, but South Africa is struggling. Impractical policies, we have spoken quite a bit about policy making and the impact of our policy over the past few days, and not considering the longer term. One of the comments yesterday in one of the sessions was, if a municipal manager has got a 5-year term, they're not thinking beyond that. It's what can we do within this 5-year term? And that was such an interesting point, because leading to our fraud and corruption as a sort of cause. So not thinking of the longer term. We can get quite concerned with that. And then where South Africa is resilient, but the world might be vulnerable, is that we've got catalysts for change. We've got the energy. South Africa's doing well. We might have Donald Trump doing what Donald Trump is doing, but we are adapting to the change, and we're doing well as South Africa. So when we process the different risks and the information that comes through in our report research, we try and plot them against these scenarios. So where do they actually fit in these different quadrants? And it just gives us an idea of how dynamic are we being, how well are we performing, or maybe how vulnerable we are, and that we're actually not as resilient as we should be. It is quite small, but again, this report is available online for you to have a look, and maybe I'll actually see if I can put a link in the WhatsApp group, because I am on the WhatsApp group already from yesterday. So you can see 2024 in the blue risks there, fairly similar to previous years where cyber is there, the rule of law and our compliance, the economy, social security, political instability, geopolitics, big buzzword at the moment, infrastructure, education, climate change, functional state, and how we're actually operating as a country. And then energy is still there. Water was new. Last year we were in a significant sort of water crisis, so that was an issue that was quite topical. And then the orange there just highlighted is our risk culture. Now we are here because we're committed to risk management, we're committed to governance, we're committed to what we're trying to achieve to add value in our organizations. And it's us that need to drive that risk culture. We have to have a good tone at the top, and I could talk about risk culture all day. We have to have that tone at the top, but also us as risk practitioners, as auditors, as governance, as officers, whatever our role might be, we need to be those drivers of change and selling good risk management in our organizations. Another view of the risks, and each year we try and display these risks differently on a sort of graphically so people can digest them. And last year they decided to talk about pivots, drivers, and outcomes. So your pivots are those things that are fairly external to our organizations, but they can have a massive impact on us. And those are the triangles, our market skills and the skills availability and capacity that we've got, the economy, and various policy that drives how we operate as organizations. You've then got the drivers. We had the functional state, our rule of law, and these are all fairly direct causes of risks that can affect us, or causal risks. Logistics and our infrastructure, water, our energy availability and reliability. And then you've got the outcomes, that a lot of these issues will then lead to our social security, food security, and our climate or adaptation to climate change. So what this diagram helps us to analyze is the interrelatedness of our risks. So these are all risk issues, but you can see the pivots are having a significant influence on a lot of the risks. The drivers are there as sort of causal factors, and then we've got our outcomes. And a lot of you in your organizations who are involved with doing your risk assessments might be struggling with what's a cause, what's an impact, what's a consequence. And this is really where this interrelatedness comes in, is that a lot of our causes can actually be risks at a different part of the organization or on an operational level versus a strategic level. A lot of our consequences could actually be risks in themselves if the consequence itself is uncertain. So don't get stressed about that, trying to package into our causes, our impacts, our risks in themselves. Have the issues identified. Don't get worried about where it's sitting on the risk register. As long as we understand our risk environment, that's what's so important so that we can actually manage it. So yeah, that interrelatedness is quite important. I don't know, the clock's not working, so you must just tell me about time. From a results perspective, I've touched on some of them already, and the report divided the risks up into a short-term perspective as well as a longer-term perspective. So you can see their functional state, rule of law, what were some of the short-term impacts, what are then some of the longer-term impacts as well. And some are fairly similar. So you will have a sort of continuum of impact that stays fairly constant as that risk is occurring. But obviously some of them, if you look at economy there, we could have capital inflows, but then moving to actual full-on fiscal failure, economic failure, no foreign investment, as an example. But I believe that presentations will all be available, and this is all in the risk report as well, obviously in a lot more detail. Going on to the rest of them, energy could be supply constraints right now, but then a complete grid collapse, fuel shortages, and so on. Skills as another example there, having a fairly weak foundation of skills and capacity, disruptions to our organizations because of skills availability, but then a longer term impact of economic growth, social inequality, all sorts of workforce issues, lack of sustainability in our job markets, and so on. But as I said, those results are all available in the report. Each sector is analyzed in the risk report each year, and the risks that have been identified, and we normally try and stick to about 12, they get ordered or ranked according to the specific industry that's being unpacked. So for the government sector, functional state was number 1, then political instability, economic instability, then the rule of law, or our level of compliance and non-compliance with legislation. Then we jump across or back up to social security, then across to energy, water, and then you can see the lower level risks of our skills, climate, technology, food security, and logistics. So each different industry, and we just highlighted government, public sector here, but each different industry, those risks get ranked and commented on in the risk report. And then just a couple of other perspectives. And as I said at the beginning, these are really here for you to use to get that contextual information when you are now going into assessing, identifying and assessing your own risks in your organization. If we look at political risk, very much external, regulatory risk that has both an external influence on us as well as our own internal regulatory environment, legal risks, and the actual efficiency of our judicial system. We talked yesterday in one of the sessions about our codes of ethics and actually being compliant and how the judicial system can support us or not. Looking at our financial risks, again from an external perspective as well as internal. People and reputation risk, quite a significant risk that we often struggle to quantify, okay? Well, we can't quantify it, but we struggle to describe it because we are trying to quantify it. And that's a whole nother topic altogether, is the difference between quantifying our risks and just understanding them and unpacking them. And then our operational risks, which will look different across all of the different organizations represented here today. But again, those different perspectives are there to really just give us that contextual information. And then starting to understand the South African, where our vulnerabilities are. We've obviously, our government of national unity, we're seeing even more sort of discussions now and who wants to pull out and who, and it's really, we think our children fight a lot. I'm not sure what happens at that top level. Our VAT increase, I'm not an economist, but that's looking pretty scary right now. Trumpety Trump, I hope there's no Trump supporters. But South Africa has always been left alone by the US, but now we're seeing these significant impacts. So I think socially, economically, there's quite a big impact there. Illicit mining, we saw that big issue with all those illegal miners trapped underground. Our infrastructure failure, we're all familiar with our potholes, and then also our employment issues, education issues, and various other concerns that we might have. So really just understanding the South African context. We see these risks, we sometimes feel immortal, that they're not going to happen to us, But yeah, my advice to you is just learn as much as you can about your external environment, understand as much as you can about your internal environment, and it really helps us to understand the risks that we might face. World Economic Forum report also gives us some contextual information. Those are the risks that were from a South African perspective. We had energy supply at number one, and this is January, February, but that the report is released, but the results are all obtained in September, October, which was when we were in quite a significant load shedding season. Unemployment and lack of economic opportunity is there, water supply, poverty and inequality, and an economic downturn. So again, some extra information for you to use in understanding your risks. Alliance Risk Barometer is another report that comes out every year. You can see their cyber incidences at the top, business interruption, natural catastrophes, extreme weather events, and so on, infrastructure blackouts. And again, a whole report that can give you some extra information. And then to close off, the whole purpose of these reports, as I've said, is to give you that information and that understanding that can then be applied to your own organization. But then we've got this call to action that every year in the URMSA risk report, we have this call to action of now to empower our risk professionals, our risk practitioners, and any other role players to actually stand up and respond to that call to action. We need bold leadership, we need decisive actions, we need to prioritize economic growth, and sometimes fiscal policies don't really make sense in terms of what the aim is there. Investing in education, tackling inequality, strengthening our governance, and that's what we've been talking about for the last couple of days as well. Infrastructure, addressing climate change. We're not going to prevent it, but we can respond to it and we can adapt to it. Promoting innovation, combating crime, and enhancing our international partnerships as well as our local partnerships. As institutes, us as URMSA, building the relationship with SIGFARO, building the relationship with other organizations to get that collective collaboration. And that's it. So.